Hi, everyone. As folks are gathering, this is Mary Larson from NAM, the NAM Foundation. Welcome to this after hours fun session. I just made up a title. When you enter, if you'd like to go into the chat and just tell us your first name and where you're from. Colette from Canada, you're number one. You don't win anything, but we're really glad to have you. Ruth, where are you from, Ruth? Just tell us where you're from, your first name and where you're from. It's really fun to see where people are from. Tulsa's in the house. Oklahoma's in the house. Nova Scotia, Arizona. Got a mariachi director. North Carolina, Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Williamsville, New York, El Paso, Texas. Music Edge at the border. Doing a project there. North Carolina. Anyway, this is fun. Plano, Texas, quite a band there, we know. Chicago, thank you. As you enter, please give us your name. First name only is required, or if you have a pseudonym or someone else that you like to be known by and you want to kind of play with that. Anyway, we're having a little fun with you. This is Mary Larson. I'm moderating this after hours skull session. And I always wondered where I need to look up the term skull session. I think it means that's where all the really smart people gather, because maybe what's inside the skull is something that's valuable, called the brain. Anyway, we've got a lovely group gathering. As you join us, please give us your name and where you're from, because that's just fun for us. And it's right at the top of the hour. It's 7 p.m., the time that our skull session is supposed to start, the after-hour CSI. And what that means to me is you're having such a remarkable time at CSI, you just do not want it to end. And you want to come together and hang out with these remarkable people. On the screen, I'm joined by pretty serious skull session here. Dr. Nola Jones, I think you've seen along the way, Tim Lotzenheiser, who kind of leads us all wherever we want to go in life. He helps us. Bob Morrison, who's not only the grand guru of data, but is certainly a champion for music education and guiding us all into wonderful directions. And Jaeger Lloyd, who is manning the entire Texas realm, and we're so grateful for your great leadership as a fine arts coordinator and a bassoonist, which does tell you we are in deep skull session land here. Smart double reed player, a flutist me, drummer Tim, drummer Bob, bassoonist Yola. I forgot your instrument. Besides being a band director,
clarinet. And I do amazing conducting.
See, so we could have a very interesting contemporary ensemble here. Okay, we would have we would take care of drummers, no problem. So anyway, welcome to our panel. I know you've all been actively presenting as part of the Conn-Selmer gathering, and first of all, I want to thank you for your really important presentations this year. Many of you for many years previously, and also for just your remarkable work that you're doing all around the country. So I would just, I know since it's kind of the evening, 7 o'clock hour in the East, we know that there's nothing like being in person in Indiana, right? We've all been on that campus and had that remarkable experience of just kind of hanging out and in between, and Tim serving us cake. It's always part of Conn-Selmer, Tim serving us cake. And we missed that this year, but our connections are still really, really mighty and really, really strong. So I'd love to hear what are your top line takeaways from this year. What were the themes and what were the outcomes that you experienced as you interacted with the great people? And I'm going to start with the Hollywood Squares. I'm going to start with Dr. Joan. Nola, since you put this all together, you get to start.
Well, Mary, we started literally, I onboarded, and on the flight home, I got out I was looking through this first legal pad today, and I started this legal pad on how we were going to put this thing together potentially. We didn't even know then. We were in that point limbo land between deciding at what point do you change courses, do you pivot, and so it's kind of where a lot of you are now, probably in your classrooms. You think you're going to do one thing, but you're also making plans for what could potentially be the inevitable. So yeah, that's what we started doing, and Tim and I talked about it. Tim's had a vision about the Division of Education for Conn-Selmer since the very beginning, and his number one thing has been relationships, and number one would be relationships and professionalism. And how do we honor both of those things with whatever we decide to do? So it was really tempting to put out a lot of stuff and get out. Teachers were in panic mode, and it would have been really easily for our limbic systems to be ignited and us to just start being reactionary. And we just decided we were going to take a breath and narrow and focus and really focus on this event. And how can we leverage these relationships and this professionalism with our senior staff and create this event that would be really meaningful and really powerful and not just something else. Because what could we create that would make teachers want to sit behind a computer for 2 days after the 8 weeks that would be inevitable? And then what if the shelter got lifted and this was the first week everybody could be out? And so what could we do to make it still worthwhile? And then we said, well, we could let them access it for 6 months afterwards so they could go back and revisit. When you're at Midwest, you have to decide if you want to go hear the Cleveland Winds or you want to go hear Dr. Tim, and they could hear everything and see everything. So that was just kind of how we built it. It's like, what do we need? How much time do we have? What are our guiding principles that are going to be our keystones? And that was really Tim set that in place, and we just followed the lead that's been set from the very beginning. And I think that's it.
Yeah, well, congratulations to the Conn-Selmer staff, because we know that you are a perfect example of a big pivot, right? You're headed one direction, and then within hours, days, you were headed in another direction to meet the need of the time. Igor, I'd love to hear from you. What are the overarching themes and experiences for this year?
I think there have been a good amount of resources that have been provided. I think that's really awesome to see coming from everywhere, not just the presenters. And I think this is what and I'm speaking from an administrative perspective because that's my current role. I think this is what we should be doing. This provides us an excellent example, an excellent platform to be able to create space and capacity for our teachers, if I'm speaking from an administrative standpoint, to be creative and to be collaborative and contribute to the solution. And I think that's one of the main things I see a lot of in the chat windows, and I see people working together in this format like we are now. Of course, this is less formal rather, but seeing more of that collaboration, not within the same state, maybe not even within the same country, that has been amazing. And it just shows me how strong we are as an industry and how we just have to keep going in this direction.
Yeah, a great chat just came through about I could have never afforded to go and make the trip in person, but this gave me access. And, we have to remember that, we may be moving into a hybrid period. Bob Morrison, what's your reaction? What were the big themes and the takeaways for this year's CSI?
Well, the first thing is I got to water my lawn, according to Dr. Tim, I think that was one of the great metaphors that he laid out, at the opening of this, about the grass is always greener on the other side, and you can look at somebody else's grass or you can water your own. And I think, where we are today, this was all about learning how to water our own lawns. And that's a lot of the information from session to session to session to session that I saw and heard other people talking about, was the fact that it was very empowering for people. They came in not knowing what really to expect because it was a different setup in a different environment. And it's just been session after session after session of both knowledge and things that are practical that they could take and use back in their own schools and their own districts. But I think also a recognition that we're all in this together. and that we're all working for the same goals, and that they're not alone. That there are a lot of folks that are cheering them on and are working on their behalf, and are doing everything that we can collectively to help them be successful, regardless of the environment that they may find themselves in. So I think that that's been one of the themes that I have seen, and it's one of the themes that I've seen people talking about, in the Facebook group that's been stood up, and in some of the other informal conversations. For me, I found it really interesting, all the different ways to interact with people. Not the same, but it is different. And I think that the platform, and a shout out to Elisa, has, they've done a great job of helping organize and make all of this work in a very professional manner. So those are the things that jumped out at me. When this is done, I got to go out and water the lawn. So,
yeah. Well, it's there's another big important profession in our lives, our mental health folks, right? That, we think we need to, turn to them when we are in crisis, but it's also important to turn to them when we are well. And sort of what we're doing for one another is turning to each other on our continuum, right, wherever we are. I think of a teacher that's maybe under that 5 years, from 0 to 5 year window. And a wonderful note just came through from someone that said they were really struggling kind of in mid-career, over a decade of teaching, and that this really lifted them into a new place. And I think that that is the essence of watering the lawn, and kudos to all of you for being such a part of that. And it's just to remember that sometimes we need to reflect, right? Reflection comes along the way and is also part of the job, right? Is that, so we turn to you, the dean of all big thoughts, Tim Latzenheiser. What were your, how many CSIs is this for you?
All of them.
But you need to turn your mic on. There's something going on there. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
There you go. I'm a techie expert. Thanks, Mary. I echo what all my colleagues said there. I think, Mary, the other day when we were talking and you said people need to be assured, they need to feel like we're going to get through this, and you were talking about hope for them. And that was the takeaway for me. Tremendous content, but people went away going, we're not going to let the kids down on this one. So you and I see alike on that. So.
Yeah. Well, that's great. And I got a great comment about, one of my favorite lines is as a seat at the table, as be part of the music education as part of the solution. And now I'll give you my, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And if you're not on the bus, you're under the bus. So folks, glad you're on the bus. That's really great. So now I want to put each of you in the category of student, because a teacher is always learning. What did you learn this year? What was a true aha moment for you that you learned, or you're going to go down through a door you didn't know that was there? Jaeger, should we start with you?
Sure. I think if we're talking about the aha moment, it was maybe more of a slap in the face. Like, oh, this is what music and fine arts administration is forever. As I've been in this role for 2 years, there's so many things that have happened in the last, what has it been, 3 months, that we've had to overcome. So getting to see all my mentors that are on this screen and people who are presenting, and getting to see some people that maybe you've heard of, just keeps reminding me of how strong this is, like I've said before. But we need inventors right now. So I'm going to go home and keep inventing. We're working on a virtual infrastructure right now to supply the type of resources that our students need to be able to move forward in the fall, because there's such a disparity, and people just, I'm seeing even in the chat, like adults not being able to maybe afford to come to this. I mean, imagine if your kid can't even afford to get online or do anything that's very simple. So for me, it's in the way of innovation. That's my aha. I have to do more and more and more, because it's just not ever done, especially for those students who might be a little bit further behind because of the resources that they may or may not have.
Yeah, we are on the edge, right? We are on the edge, and it's leaps. There needs to be a lot of leaps that take us in a lot of directions. Bob, what did you learn this year? Again, someone that's teaching us so many things, but also capturing and taking in so much information and processing. What did you learn this year?
I learned that Paula Kreider is a rock star. Right? Actually,
you relearned that. You just relearned.
It was reinforced for me. I knew that all along, but it was just reinforced for me. I think that what I learned was how adaptable our community really is, and I think that we've seen that in a lot of the sessions here, and in talking about how we have to adapt what we're doing, and in session after session. And unfortunately, I haven't been able to get to that many, but the ones that I was able to get into, and in watching what the commentary has been on with the Facebook groups, I really think that there is a real sense of, we can do this. That we can adapt, that we can make the best of it, that we don't have to be chained to our own old calendars. I think actually somebody commented that in the chat about how freeing this is, where their calendar is not determined by individual director calendars anymore. That that there's a sense of freedom, a sense of optimism, of new opportunity, as opposed to lamenting the fact about the things that are not available to our students. So I think that that's been a very positive from what I've been able to tell.
Yeah,
and at least that's what I've taken away.
Yeah, great. When this all came forward so quickly, and I too was processing what is our way forward as advocates and for music education. How do we keep the path level? And it was like, we just have to reinvent our student-centered advocacy. We just have to work from the needs of the student and keeping that as the foremost. So yeah, very important. Nola, how about you? Besides filling up a legal pad and learning a lot more about technology and this type of platform, maybe than you would ever know, what else did you learn along the way?
A stack of legal pads, but who's counting? No, I learned, Mary, I think what I learned was that we may all look different. I mean, we may all come from different experiences, but music teachers are all cut from the same cloth. And at the end of the day, Daniel Pink talks about autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And our purpose is to give every child the opportunity to have quality music education. And it may look different. The how may change, but the what doesn't change. And we're all cut from the same cloth. And we're going to get through this, and we're going to make this happen.
So you got a lot of reinforcement for the work that you've devoted your life to, right?
No one I asked for anything even hesitated. They didn't even take a breath. And I bet I called 500 people in the last 12 weeks to help with this project. And it was like, what do you need? Just tell me. And then every single one of them delivered.
Yeah.
And that's what our community is.
Right. And we have to be mindful of that when we're in the middle of getting ready for that next school board presentation, or going to see our administrator, or gathering a coalition and looking at a schedule of how the schedule might look for the fall. I just and use the network, right? Go back to people and talk things through, All right, Dr. Tim, what did you learn?
Well, I always learn a lot because I don't know a lot to start out with. So there's a lot of room in there to fill for me. Mary, you and Bob and I have something in common. We have been gypsies championing this cause forever. And I think, not to take something bad and spin it to good, but people are waking up to, hey, we better get to our principal and our superintendent and our parents, and survival is at this. So the message that you two have given your lives to is now emblazoned in their brains. That's what I got.
Crisis to focus one's attention, right? Yeah. If you weren't good at having a conversation about this you can get really good at having a conversation about this really quickly.
Well, it's all communication, right?
Right. Right. And if you're coming from a place where you are serving children extremely diligently and well with passion and commitment, you just carry that conversation because that's going to continue in some form. And you just have to be part of the solution to serve the needs of those children. Now, it sounds really simple when I said it, but the hard part is making the meetings and keep going to the meetings and keep showing up. What is it in 90% of a success is showing up, right? Am I close with my percentage? I think it is, isn't it? And I don't know if there's a similar statement for an advocacy or building coalitions or making sure your program is supported. You just have to show up. You have to represent what you really, really care about for what children. So here's a little bit of a deeper dive, but I enjoyed writing this question, so I hope you enjoy answering. I really think that one of the things that glues music educators together and why they are so inspired as they enter the field and stay with the field and build with the field and have these remarkable outcomes, and from general music to little kids to honors ensembles to the intergalactic marching band. I borrowed that from you, Dr. Tim. So I think that there's a certain amount of certainty in what music teachers do. Right? I mean, you're either in tune or you're not. You're either in 3/4 time or you're in 4/4 time. There's 4/4 notes usually in a half note if you're in 4/4 time. Sharp generally goes a half step up. I mean, we have the privilege of teaching something that is centuries old. Right? It's based on science. It's based on physics. It's something that you can teach early in life and it lasts a lifetime, right? So, and usually the fourth graders would show up at 2:00, or the honors band was every other day after school, and the marching band has camp, and all of a sudden, teachers that do so well in teaching a sophisticated subject based on so much knowledge that they themselves have developed are kind of thrown into uncertainty. And I think that's just part of the conundrum. And but we also saw immediately when all this online teaching started to occur, this phenomenal resilience to just dive into the problem. So my question is, for a music teacher, and I'll make this broad statement, essentially steeped in certainty, I think that's essentially, what human reserves must we call upon to move from reacting to the problems ahead to solving the problems ahead? What is something that we need to maybe admit we have to work on in terms of our own human reserves, or something that we have to come, or a new skill that maybe we have to confront and develop. I saw you shaking your head, Jaeger. Maybe I should start with you. Is that fair?
That's my thinking face. But I will go. I don't mind. I was thinking, when you're saying coming out about certainty and uncertainty, and what came to my mind is like everybody's, and I've seen people type in the chat, we're all the same place right now. I mean, at least 4 or 5 months ago, we were all at the same place. We all hit the wall. We all had to sit at home. We all had to do these things. And I think that might be the only time in a lot of ways that Americans, maybe mentally, might be in the same space, which helps me as an educator go, I know what my child might be feeling right now because it's empathetic. So when you said that, it immediately sparked that. And then I went into the fact that as things have evolved and more things have happened, there might be a change or a shift in that from within us that creates a completely different product. So one of the challenges I know that we'll be facing within my area is, okay, well, how do we supply, or how do we see the eyes of education through a completely different child's or experience? And I'll just hit the nail on the head. I'm a Black guy. So now that that's been all over the news and everything, students are going through that. Students went through the pandemic. Those are two big traumatic events that we have to acknowledge now in education. So whether that changes our practice, which it should, or whether it impacts our empathetic response to how students are feeling every day, those are the types of things that I think are going to be required for us to change. So one of the things for us, we're going to be looking at our resources in Austin, Texas, to try and create some more virtual content, some virtual concerts, or any sort of other type of support for those students or for our teachers who won't have the time or resource to be able to create those things. You know, this platform has served, again, as a great example of how we can continue to imagine our virtual environment. There's so many things we can do. It's like sky's the limit. It's cool.
I think you've given us a really, really important phrase to hold on to, which is an empathetic response. You know, I think maybe because we've all been home and we've been slowed down, right? It's like a deliberate, like, screech. We've been slowed down, that we maybe have had a little bit more space and time to reflect and to take things in, right? And then, yes, this dramatic thing has also entered the equation. So with Black Lives Matter and, you know, all the events of this time also, but, you know, that we can go deep within ourselves and make a choice for how we are going to enter and go forward. And I love what you said with an empathetic response. Sometimes it's not just solving the problem, but really understanding the problem, right? Right. Yeah, that's wonderful.
So if I want to jump in on that for a second, you know, I think one of the things that I think we have to put into context is we've had the Spanish flu of 1918, the Great Depression of the late 20s, and we've had the protests of the 60s, all in the past 3 months. So, you know, I mean, it's literally, we're going through, you know, something that is extraordinary. And the other thing that I think is important to understand that Jaeger hit on, we are all going through the same thing. But I like the metaphor that we're all actually in the same ocean together. We're all in the ocean at the same time, but we're in very different boats. There are some people that are on this ocean with big old yachts, and there are other people that are in small rowboats, and there are some people that don't have a boat at all. And I think we have to recognize that not everyone is in the same position. We've got a lot of kids that since we checked out, since they left school in March, in some of our communities that we haven't heard from. Some communities as high as 20-25%. So as we get ready for what's next, we have to help figure that out and reach out to them. And we've got to address some of the critical inequities that had a big old spotlight shined on them, where, you know, a lot of our, you know, suburban, well-fluent communities, they have one-to-one Chromebooks. They were able to make the switch to digital learning very quickly. Patterson, New Jersey here, they were running out of paper trying to print packets, and it was a rush at the end of the year just to try to get enough Chromebooks for the students. So I'm hopeful that what we've learned in the past 2 months will make what we come into that much better. But I think that we always have to acknowledge and be aware that we're all in the same ocean, but we're not in the same boat. And we need to make sure that as we're devising strategies, that we are devising strategies for all of our students, even those that don't have access to the same technology as everyone else, because they're just as important as the ones that do.
Yeah, Bob, you said it once again. You said it very well. I think there's when we talk about the reserves for a music teacher or the new facilities, that it's also a time. You know, we talk about teaching the whole child. There's also time to care for the whole child, right? And for all the children in the community. And there may be even a part of you that is interested in that and wants to use a piece of your talent and your intellect and your thinking to go over and work on that problem too, right? And to understand that problem too, in a deeper kind of way. You know, sometimes as music education advocates, we get very focused on what we need and what we have to move forward on. But it is a time to embrace like you said, the ocean, the larger problem. Just today there was a remarkable study that hit my desk. Again, these public policy and health professionals are just cranking out the data and the analysis. And they said, what a remarkable thing that this world has done in 10 weeks. In 10 weeks, we basically, we depressed the economy by 20%. Most of the population stayed home. And if you put that in an algorithm, we saved 500 million people's lives. Someone said, how are you going to measure the value of what we have all done collectively? Well, they tried it, and that's the number they came up with today. Now, tomorrow, someone will challenge that number. I mean, that's how the debate works. But it was just, they said it's been remarkable what we've been able to do collectively, what we were willing to sacrifice together. So when you say, what would be a community together be willing to sacrifice for its children, right? What would be the work that you could contribute to in that way? So, Dr. Tim, you've helped teachers for a long time. Teachers well, teachers in training. What do you think the reserves teachers need to pull on? And make sure your mic is on.
It's on, yeah?
Yeah.
That's on, good. Hit that in. Always, it always comes back for me is when you said, what are people going to have to do different, particularly from an advocacy situation? And I'm not talking about just music. I'm talking students. People are going to have to get out of their comfort zones a little bit to have conversations with people they wouldn't otherwise have conversations with, and lock arms with their buddies in doing this. I just still think it all comes back to communication in some focus, and sitting around talking about it, doesn't do it. We have to. That's where I am about it.
Right. We have to do something. Right. But sometimes, I admit it does start with a conversation with someone or getting some advice. But again, that's when people ask me how I got into my concerns for this world, I always tell them that I was a kid of the 60s. I watched all that go down. I saw all that social injustice happen around me. It was, luckily in Madison, Wisconsin, for a good while, it was peaceful. And there was also a big faith-based engagement with the problem. And, that's kind of how it stuck with me, that you can get involved and you can help change the world. You can help make things better by your engagement. Nola, how about you? What reserves do we want to build? Do teachers need to pull from or build?
Mary, don't you think that it's really important for teachers to remember right now, music teachers especially, that we are the only adults in our students' lives who can give them what we give them? And so much social emotional learning, the family in school, the repeated years in our classes, the aesthetic experience, the music content. We're the only adults they have who do this at this level and make it safe for them to be able to experience that. And so we have a purpose that's different from any other adult in their lives. And if we can just draw on that and not worry about teaching to the clock and not worrying about if maybe A440 on the sixth grade clarinet is A36 for just a hot minute. And so what if they're not playing up on the housetop by December? So what if they don't cross the break the second week of February when they think they should? So what if they, and taking care of them as people and as humans first, and remembering that we teach kids, the rest of it will take care of itself. It'll take care of our own souls. It'll give us a purpose and an autonomy and allow us to draw on our mastery. And it'll also heal what we're missing in our souls. I got a feeling there are a lot of teachers who are going to be really excited to see their kids, and maybe there are a lot of things a lot of us won't take for granted, maybe the way we have before.
Yeah, so all of you have said such important things.
Yep.
I think it's like kind of a bit of a deep breath moment, right? It starts with and also you have to care for yourself if you're going to care that deeply for your students, right? It has to be a cycle of real conscious or intentional work. So I enjoyed a few weeks ago, it feels like, I don't know what day it is, what webinar are we doing? It does feel like that some days. But again, such an important part of our work at NAM has been reaching out to our NAM members and to our colleagues and our music ed colleagues and supporting the whole network. And along the way, every now and then someone offers up, they said, well, there's been some interesting things that I never thought would happen, and they're happening. I guess they're called silver linings, right? So, and some have already remarked on them, but is there any other silver linings you would like to point out for this whole time? Dr. Tim, turn on your mic.
I got it on this time, kiddo. Many people have told me to keep it off. Yeah, this whole thing would not have happened had it not been the pandemic. We wouldn't be having this conversation. And so, yeah, we're looking in places we've never looked before. That's why I'm so excited about the advocacy part of this. People go, wait a minute here. This is important. And instead of maybe I need 5 more marimbas. And that's a percussionist talking too. So I'll turn my mic off now.
We got a comment come through. I said this earlier on our teaching and learning music online, which has 16,000 registrants. I mean, it was just amazing. And we said, kids are home, they got time. I think there's been a lot of practicing. If there's at Uber, a generalization for a silver lining. I think, kids have gone pretty deep with their instruments. How about you, Jaeger? What's your version of a silver lining?
That's what I was just about to say. Better kids. I mean, we all love our kids, but they're getting a lot of really personalized attention right now. And I think maybe some of you, depending on how you chose to do a virtual format, if you did one, probably saw some things that you did not think you'd see. Well, the good things, right? In a student that may be in a class of 10 or 30 or larger, that you never really got to understand what they're trying to get out of band or out of music in general. So I think that's a huge silver lining. And I think I've seen in my own teachers in Round Rock, I've said this about collaboration, but their sense of energy and collaboration towards solving this issue, supplying resources for students as well as other teachers has been, it can't be understated. It's pretty crazy. If you just build it, they'll deal with it after that. You go 90, they'll go 10. Is that the rule? Mm-hmm. Something like that?
Yeah. I've remarked to parents who have young children at home. I have old children at home, but which has been wonderful. But I remarked to parents with those 8 years old, there's 10-year-olds. I said, I don't know. I think they like have a secret society and they're texting each other in the middle of the night. I said, we just love this. For them to be with their parents and to spend this quality time with their parents. I just think it's, I think that there's more going on there than maybe they reveal to us about what their experience, and I'm sure it'll come out. Silver linings, Bob? Bob, we need you.
So for me, one of the big silver linings was just the innovation, right? We've done our programs the same way over and over, the same cycle. We get into that rhythm, and some say it's a groove. Other people would say it's a rut. But I think what this has enabled us to do is really take a fresh look at what we're doing. And it's forced us to be very innovative and very creative. And I think that what it's going to allow us to do is to see other aspects of our artistic process be able to come forward. So when we talk about creating, we talk about improvisation, we talk about connecting, we talk about the way that our students can have a voice. And I think that that's also been a big part of this. There's had to be more student voice in this process because of the fact that there's been a lot of self-directed learning going on by our students. And so I think that that's been the silver lining for me, because of the innovation that we're seeing. And it's like I said this morning, I think that what's happening now is transformational and will have long-lasting systemic changes into how we approach music making. And I believe that we're going to have more music makers as a result.
Yeah. Nola, your thoughts? What's the silver lining?
The silver lining is we're reminded of our community and that we can lean on each other and support each other, and that we are more creative and more resilient than we ever dreamed. I think we're reminded of a strength within us that we didn't realize we had, or that sometimes, as Bob said, maybe it's a rut or we get in there. And I just think teachers are finding strength and resilience and creativity. They're reminded, and there's a neuroplasticity happening because we're exercising parts of ourselves that we haven't used the way we, wouldn't have had we not been in this situation.
Yeah, all really wonderfully said. I'll come to your house for a lemonade anytime.
Mary, can I ask you what you see? I mean, you've been helping us out. What do you see?
I see an organism. If you go to one of those BBC ocean things, right? That big, with think of like the intergalactic documentary of the organism, right? I see an organism, music education, that finally the neurosynapse of its connectivity got lit up. Right, the interconnectivity, and I think the students did it for us. I think the minute that teachers started teaching students individually online, they got reignited because they were back to the basics of why they became a teacher. So I think that that's the biggest silver lining that I've seen, is that the fact that in a switch, I mean, within hours, you went from planning your spring recital and festival season to dealing with every student in every class and realizing that you still wanted to teach them music and it was valuable, but you had to do this innovation flip so you could reach them and you could mold them into ongoing learning. And the students just ate it up for the most part. And then you got reignited again. So I think that we all kind of went back to basics.
Don't you think?
Of teaching the basics of our empathetic relationships. I mean, that's, being able to connect individually and in small groups to kids. So I see a passion for teaching.
Don't you think that makes the teacher more important?
Say that again, Tim?
Don't you think that makes the teacher even more important?
I think the teacher is more important on more levels than ever before.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah.
It's the content. It's the creativity that lies inside the content, which a lot of times we don't get to because of the stepwise progress of getting to festivals and concerts and all the things that dealing with the individualized potential of students, being able to play with materials and ensembles and composition and analysis. This is what maybe, and forgive me if I've said this too many times, but I think of that, the conductor of the Intergalactic Honors Wind Ensemble, right? That all of a sudden can't see that wind ensemble, right? And they had all this planning in place. So then instead of, after you sat and cried for a day, I would do that. Well, I did cried for a day, then went and said, all right, every class session, I get to have my class session, we're going to do sight reading. When he's ever done sight reading with an honors band? I'm going to do ear training. I'm going to listen to all the great Frederick Fennell recordings, and we're going to score analysis. So I'm going to get all the kids to read scores, and then we're going to have a conducting symposium. And then they're all going to learn a secondary instrument, you know, by the time they get to summer. And then maybe boy, when that ensemble comes back together, you won't even need to rehearse, just give the concert, right? I mean, the level of literacy that you have been able to build. And that's, I think, what was the flip that got switched in a lot of teachers. And that gives me a lot of inspiration. Well, we want to be respectful of your time and our audience time. And we've loved having our audience here. And thank you so much for your comments. I do want to leave a little time for questions. So I'll say you can either give me you can do one of two answers. You can either do, what are you most hopeful for? What are you most hopeful about? One thing. You might want to say more, but that's okay. But really one thing. And if you want to make that your final thought or come back to a final thought, we can do that too. So what are you most hopeful for, and or is that your final thought?
Hey, Mary, while they're typing that in, can you share just a little bit of information about the NAMM Day of Advocacy on June 16th? Because that's the next time that we need to all be together.
Right. Next week, June 16th, which is a week from today, we'll be holding the NAMM Advocacy Summit. It's from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. I think that's right. 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. on Eastern time, 10 to 2. So it's actually 1 to 5 Eastern time. So it's 10 to 2 Pacific time, all online, a virtual event with a big roster of presenters. And we'll be looking at really a unified and collective voice for music education support, from the congressional ask to a governor ask, just to carrying a unified statement back to your district, and also some nitty-gritty. It is free. Now, when you go to the NAMM.org website, Issues and Advocacy, NAMM Advocacy Fly-In, you have to register on the NAMM website. That just allows us to have you register for the event. But there's no cost to register. You don't have to be a NAMM member. If for some reason you have gone down the wrong path and you end up being asked to sign up as a member, you don't have to do that. So we would just welcome you to be with us. We've got live music slots. We're going to have live music during the event. In between the presentations, our lobbyists from Washington will be with us. We'll be talking about the Title IV results from this year, and we would really love to have you all with us. We want you to go away from that day equipped and ready to go and shove your chair up to the table and be part of the solution going forward for your district. That has a lot to do with what we hope to equip you on. Thank you for reminding me of that. All right, what are you the most hopeful for, and final thoughts? Who wants to go? Hollywood Squares. Bob Morrison. Bob, we can't hear you.
I'm sorry.
It's been a long.
So many different systems that I use, and they reverse on each other, right? When it's lit, it's on. It's the anyway. You know, I was said it this morning. I think that you know, the thing that I'm most hopeful about is that the fact that there is brighter days ahead. I don't think this is the sunset on us or our programs at all. I think it is the sunrise. You know, a new day is dawning for us to be able to imagine what a future in music education looks like in this new environment, and the things that we can learn and take with us as this pandemic passes and we have a vaccination, how this will then further transform our programs as we bring back some of the things that we've had to let go of for the time being. So I'm just optimistic because of the creativity and ingenuity and ability to improvise that our educators have shown. And I think that's been the heartening thing for me. If we've had to struggle through this, maybe I'd feel differently, but but I don't. I have a lot of optimism. I have a lot of hope, and I think that the future is much brighter ahead of us. It's not to say that it's going to be easy, and it's not to say that there won't be some collateral damage along the way or some rough seas. But I think once we get to the other side of it, it's going to be a very interesting, creative, innovative place that is bringing more kids, more students into music making. And I think that's, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. So that's what I'm hopeful for. And that's my final thought, final comment.
And you're sticking to it, and I agree with you. You know, I've had friends that have gone through some rough times. We all have. We've gone through rough times. And I remember saying to a few, I said, well, you know, it's not supposed to be easy. You know, I mean, things that you really care about, things that you really are passionate about and want to move it forward in the world, you know, they require, you know, a little effort, you know, like getting first chair, you know, I mean, and, you know, again, all our music teachers know what this means. They were all, you know, hyper achievers. Jaeger, how about you? What are you most hopeful for, and kind of your final thoughts?
I think my hope comes from an email I received, which I know is very rare for everyone to receive an email of hope, unless it's from Dr. Lotzenheiser. So one of my orchestra directors emailed me and said, I have these two kids who they're graduates from this Title I campus, Title I middle school campus. These graduates, they really want to provide free lessons to students who aren't able to do it. And we have an elementary strings program in our district. And so one of the things that may be common for you, but that's very uncommon for our students to just go, all right, we're going to teach free lessons, and please send it out to every single campus that you have. We want to cover as many students as we can. These students were not affluent. They weren't typical students. They're just motivated. So that tells me that we're influencing our kids right now by what we're doing, sitting right here. And I think we have to continue to do that, because our results, just because we take data on specific things, right, doesn't mean that other data isn't being created. So to me, that points to, oh, we're going to have an excellent music education future if we have juniors in high school creating content and teaching lessons in a synchronous fashion. That's amazing. So I think we just need to continue to up the standard, be more innovative, be more creative. And that's, you know, for all of you out there, thank you again for coming and supporting us. You're part of this innovation, and I know you're going to take this information that you've learned these last 2 days, and maybe you're going to the next 2 days, and utilize that in your districts, in your classrooms, everywhere, or just virtually. So that's my final thought is.
That's great. And I think the juniors teaching the rest of the kids is on my list of having all the sight singing and ear training. You know, I mean, just when we teach something, we learn the most for ourselves, right? All right, Nola, Tim, who goes next? I don't know if I should. Nola?
We'll save Tim. We'll save the very best for last. I'm just hopeful that when this is all hopeful, I believe in 10 years, we're going to look back and say, this is the tipping point. You've read the Tipping Point book, and that this was the tipping point where we all reinvested. We all learned things that we probably wouldn't have learned, and we're all better at what we do. And our society is better because we linked arms and recommitted ourselves to this work.
Thank you, Nola. All right, Dr. Tim, the dean of all.
Hardly. You know, what I get excited about are people like Jaeger. You are young, you are brilliant, you have got your mind in the right place, and we need to get you in the front line. And I don't you, Mary and Bob, everybody go like, we got one. Put him on the pitcher's mound now. I mean, I'm serious, not trying to make you feel good. That's just hope for me. So, but music's not going to go away. We know that. We'll make it. I promise.
Well, I am so delighted that I could spend this time with 4 of my heroes. And again, congratulations to Conn-Selmer and its great vision and its great outreach to this wonderful community. And to all of you, you know, I'm surprised you even let me on this webinar. I didn't have a purple shirt, you know. I didn't get the memo, but I'm not gonna feel bad about it. You know, I'm okay with it. But but thank you very much. Tim, one more thing to say?
Yeah, thank you, Mary. You again, not to make you feel good or blow sunshine, but you've given your life to this, and you have been a part of CSI. You're a Hall of Famer. CSI.
I have my little drum.
Absolutely. And John, we're on your shirt tails. Count on it, kiddo.
Right.
That's
So,
right.
Mary, we love you. It's not enough to say thank you. We love you. We love you for what you do for us. Thank you.
Love me so much that you'll join us on June 16th for the NAM Advocacy Summit. So, good night to all of you. Thank you all for the wonderful hundreds of folks that joined us on this. Panelists, you are awesome. And everyone have a wonderful evening. Take care.
Bye, Mary.